if you're not in a state or an attitude of forgiveness, you can pretty much forget about what you would call bliss or freedom or liberation. So forgiveness is this field, this unified field of love, being tapped into by you as an individual, being channeled, being called upon, being almost demanded in a way to act through you, being invited in by you, by your consciousness, by your free will. Forgiveness usually comes before that sense of the soul being free, that sense of the soul being liberated, being free of strain, free of stain, free of traces, free of karmic responsibilities, obligations, bondage, and so on. It's a release. And it can be very radical and powerful. It has the power to be in an instant. Welcome, friends. Can you hear me? Good. Good to see you again. Today's topic, and I want to try to leave some more room for questioners and also maybe for some people to come on stage, so to speak, and have a live interaction with me. But today's topic piggybacks off of last time's topic, which was love. So I hope that session integrated well for you. I hope it landed. I hope you watched it again. Always useful to watch it at least twice. So I won't go too deeply into love anymore, but it is nice to briefly summarize it before we proceed with the topic of forgiveness, because it's a very natural extension of our understanding of love. Or I should say, of the actuality or reality of love. So again, if we picture love as the emanation, the result, you know how a rainbow it's not really tangible, it's not really a physical thing, you can't grab it, it's formless, it is there, but it's not there. Love is kind of like this, you can't grab it, it's formless, but it is also really there. And just like a rainbow is a combination of water and sunlight being refracted in a certain way, it's the effect of these two combined. So you could say, in analogy, if the rainbow is the result or effect or emanation of raindrops and sunlight, which together emanate, it's almost like a Big Bang, it emanates this rainbow effect. Similarly, love, true love, real love, unconditional love, reliable love, universal love, God's love, is the emanation of putting two things together, which is only one thing in the end. Infinity, or the original one, unity, plus an awareness of its own unity. So if we could say oneness, that's aware of its own oneness. The result is an energy that we call love. It's a presence that we call love. It's a manifestation which we call love. And this is one of the very first manifestations in a chronological sense. If we look at how did things manifest from this original source. So you could say there's this source. The source becomes somehow aware. And once it, in a sense, is aware of its own oneness, the emanation of that, what gets manifested, the spark that friction or that symbiotic meeting point brings forth is the energy of love. And this energy is very creative. It is the foundation, it's the bedrock, it's the substratum of literally everything that we see, hear, taste, smell, touch today. So everything ultimately is made of the energy of love, guided by the awareness or intelligence of Source. So that will be it for the summary. Again, if you want to dive deeper into that, you can review the session from 2 weeks ago. So then, if we've visualized this love as, to make it easy, we could say it's like the ocean, like an ocean or like a field, the field of love that is all permeating, that is everywhere, every time, no matter what's going on, no matter what you think, don't think, judge, don't judge, feel, don't feel. This field is there, perforating, penetrating, permeating, pervading everything. You could say your body, you could say your mind, you could say your thoughts, your experience, but literally your entire experience is suffused with the energy of Source, knowing itself as ultimately one, aka love. The energy of Source, which knows itself as one, is love. So love is kind of the first energy, because awareness, you can't quite call awareness energy yet. So Source wakes up to itself, or somehow becomes aware. And then when it begins to recognize its unity, its inseparability, its indivisibility, its unity, its oneness, out of that, there is sort of a metaphysical Big Bang, which is the energy of love. It's the first sort of energy manifestation. It's still formless. Love is still formless. It doesn't look like this. It doesn't look like that. It's not always nice. It's not always fierce. It's not human. It's not a dog, unlike popular belief. It's not a cat either. It's not anything in particular. So it's formless, but it is energy. It's the first type of energy, you could say. And so since we, our physicists always say everything is energy, and that ultimately everything comes down to that, I would say that, yes, everything is energy, but in essence, therefore, everything is the energy of love. Then forgiveness is like love in action, isn't it? It's love given shape. It's love given context. It's love that's given a relationship. It's love activated within the illusion of having a subject, aka your sense of me, and an object, aka the sense of the other self. Because usually forgiveness pertains to people, right? Let's be honest. And it doesn't, nobody's mad at an apple. So we don't have to forgive apples usually. It's usually human beings. Sometimes, and actually quite commonly to some degree, even if people are not fully aware of this, forgiveness also very much pertains to life itself, or love, or God. We feel betrayed by God. We feel betrayed by love. We feel abandoned by God, and so on. We feel unheard, right? So, but that's only because really we personalize God. We project God to be almost like a person. So when it comes down to it, forgiveness really has everything to do with you as a subject forgiving either yourself as an object, because you also have a subject-object relationship with yourself, or it applies to the forgiveness of some other entity, whether that be God, the universe, higher self, or other human beings, usually. So forgiveness is this field, this unified field of love, being tapped into by you as an individual, being channeled, being called upon, being almost demanded in a way to act through you, being invited in by you, by your consciousness, by your free will. So forgiveness is this love applied, love in action. Forgiveness is also liberation. It's the first step to liberation. It's the initial hurdle. If you're not in a state or an attitude of forgiveness, you can pretty much forget about what you would call bliss or freedom or liberation. You can pretty much forget about it. So forgiveness really is that courage requiring cornerstone, that first base that we need to touch base with, generally before the other bases open up, before the higher levels open up, before that liberation opens up. Now, it's not mechanically impossible to attain a high level of liberation of consciousness without first having forgiven things in your life. It is possible. But then that would have to come through a sort of deep, yogic almost type of realization, usually resulting from a very focused, dedicated application of your will, where you have a realization as to the nature of reality. That will then generate or cause or release forgiveness quite automatically, if that's profound enough. So it's not impossible, but in a more gradual, more accommodating to the average Joe, not that you guys are average Joes, but you get my point, to the everyday life, relatable life experience. To make it more accommodating to that, I would say forgiveness usually comes before that sense of the soul being free, that sense of the soul being liberated, being free of strain, free of stain, free of traces, free of karmic responsibilities, obligations, bondage, and so on. So forgiveness is the first step to liberation. It's the cornerstone. It's also just a great way to live. You know, spirituality aside, it's also just a very powerful state to be in. It's a very good feeling state to be in. It has a lot of benefits on many levels. In a larger context of humanity as it is progressing right now, forgiveness is absolutely fundamental and crucial to the shift that we're heading into, in my opinion. You could also say love is. But then again, these two are almost synonyms. But one is static, the other is kinetic. One is just as it is always, and the other, forgiveness, needs to be actualized. It's by choice. Love is not by choice. Love is, whether you like it or not. Whether you love or not, love is. You can't do anything about that. But forgiveness can either be there or not be there. And that is what's channeled through you. It's what actualized through you. What you have to potentiate it. You have to actualize it. You have to call upon it. You have to decree that this needs to flow through you. Again, love in action. Love actualized. Isn't that a movie? Love actually. And so for humanity right now, to put it in that larger context, we really need a good dose of forgiveness to move on. Because the lack of forgiveness is essentially what we've called karma. The result is karma, or in the East, they call it bondage. Not to be mistaken with the Western bondage. But in the East, they use that word quite a lot, that the soul is in bondage, the consciousness is in bondage. And so if we are bound, what does that mean, to be in bondage? It means to be bound to something. So you've got subject-object orientation. You've got your original sense of I am, your sense of me, right? And this sense of me is in relationship to its own body as an object, even its own mind. Even your own mind is your object. It's an object that you, the deeper you, is in relationship to. So if we go back a few more sessions, you remember the great causal body, aka God, love, this field of love. Then there is the sort of individuated I am in the causal body. And then there's the subtle body of the mind, and then there's the physical body. So these are all objects to you as the ultimate subject. So again, you are also in relationship with yourself. This is why self-forgiveness is even a thing. Because if there was just one level of you, if there was just you, the subject, and you were not in relationship to any objectified sense of yourself, if you didn't have the feeling, oh, I am in relationship to my body, I can walk left, I can walk right, I can feed it, I cannot feed it, right? The body is an object appearing in your awareness. So subject, object. But if you look closely at your mind, although typically our identity is in the subtle body, kind of caught up, it's bound to the subtle body. So we don't see our thoughts as clearly. We kind of think that's what we are. You know, that's why we have many blind spots. That's why we're so stubborn, so insistent, And that's why forgiveness can be so hard, because we really think this is what we are, this thinking, reasoning, rationalizing, perspective-ridden body, but we're not. And many of you have seen through this, just different degrees. So also your thoughts, your mind, your ways of reasoning, your belief systems, the way your parents raised you to think, all that has got 0.0000000 to do with you. Absolutely zilch. You just think it's got a certain percentage to do with you. That's why you're defensive of it. That's why you're in need of forgiveness. That's why you're stubborn in certain ways, probably. It's because you have bound yourself to the subtle body, to the mind. But if you look at it closely, if you become present and mindful to it, you can very clearly see that thoughts are objects. They're not the subject. It's easy to see with the physical body. The body appears to me. I'm not really in the body. It's appearing to my consciousness. But with the mind, it becomes a little subtler, trickier. So much of our identity is there. Our stories live there, right? And who are we without our stories? We'll find out. But thoughts are objects. And when you see that thoughts are objects, you realize, wait a second, it's not me. I am in relationship, subject, I, to the objects of thoughts, to the objects of belief systems, to the objects of my reasoning. And then it goes even deeper to that, like the whole unconscious realm of seed thoughts. These are also objects. So you are in relationship with yourself as much as you are in relationship to the objects of other selves. You, what you think of as you, is an object appearing to what you actually are. Always this is the case. Call whatever you will you. Whatever you can witness right now that you think is you, I guarantee you it's not you yet. It's still an appearance, an object, appearing to the subject, the ultimate subject of you. And ultimately, that subject is awareness, or God's awareness, or Source's awareness. All right, so back to forgiveness. The opposite of forgiveness is bondage. It is to be bound to an experience. It's to be attached to an object. It's to tie your originally free subject, yourself, capital S, and to tie it to an object in this world. Whether it be a thought about God having betrayed you, that's an object in your mind. It's got nothing to do with God. God's not up there in your mind. You're projecting an image of God has abandoned me, betrayed me. Why is God not listening to me? Or you can replace the word God with life or the universe, if you prefer. You get the point. That has nothing to do with you, nor with God. It's a complete delusion. It's a complete illusion. It's a completely fabricated mentation. Right? It exists as a flimsy object. That whole experience of God or life or another person having betrayed you or abandoned you, ultimately, that whole experience only exists inside this tiny, flimsy little electromagnetic thought wave. But from within that tiny little electromagnetic flimsy thought wave that has no substance, it comes and goes, boop, gone, nothing to do with you. But inside of that wave, when your consciousness is bound inside of that little wave, then you see inside that tiny little flimsy wave, this whole world reality appears of the world and God not listening to you, or someone having betrayed you, or it exists inside the thought. Because it doesn't exist when you're asleep at night, when you're sleeping at night. You exist when you sleep at night, but the whole same world doesn't exist. It exists, an entire world can exist in the tiniest little shape, in the tiniest little electromagnetic wave that we call a thought or a perspective. It contains the entire world that you experience. And you can test this for yourself. Stop thinking. And in that second of no thought, where there's only the presence of you, where's the world? Show me the world without thinking, without going back out there in that tiny little electromagnetic thought wave that thinks the world is there. When you stop thinking, the world ends. Evidence right there, my friends, the world never existed. This is a grand mirage. Evidence right there. Now, most minds won't accept this right off the bat because it still seems very instinctual that there's actually a door over there about 5 meters away from me, and I can take this physical body, get over there and walk. But you can do that without thinking, and you won't experience a world. You'll only experience consciousness. And this will recontextualize your entire world experience. It will turn the universe inside out. It will revert it back to its original, rightful place as a dream inside of God's mind, which is the subject that you are. Now forgive me for lighting a cigar. Practice for the next minute. Smoke and mirrors. That's all the world is. All right, so you get the idea. You are pure awareness, true, actual reality. This awareness can have a thought form, appear inside of its own capacity to be aware. And you can test this again right now. You are aware of my voice. It takes you zero effort to hear my voice, unless you have hearing impairment, but that's just a phenomenon. But it takes no effort to perceive, is my point. It takes no effort to perceive. You are aware as we speak already, naturally. That's not something you do. Check in with yourself. Are you doing awareness? Actually, check in with your direct experience, which is always necessary. Are you doing awareness right now? Does awareness depend on you doing it, maintaining it? Do you have to maintain awareness in order to continue to exist in an aware state? Or are you being awareness? Now, okay, granted, you may not always recognize this awareness. You may forget about it because we love those tiny little electromagnetic whimsical, flimsy thought projections that project entire realities. And so this pure awareness that we are, this pure vastness, this limitlessness, this unbound freedom, this bliss, this natural, automatic, love-infused forgiveness in action, gets so suckered in by the next thought it has, that the mind has, and the next thought that the mind has, all these projections, these imaginations. And then we are surprised that we don't feel so good, that we long for home. But home is right here before the mind starts. Before you kickstart the world in the form of your imagination, home is right here. It never left you. And awareness is one of these access points, one of these pointers into that. So the awareness that hears my voice, the real subject within you, the background subject, the most background level of your subject that you can't get rid of. You can think, you cannot think, you can be mindful, you can be forgetful. But behind all that, there is an unshakable background of your actual me. That's where you feel, I am. That's where you feel like you're coming home when you move your mind, or consciousness rather, closer to that realm and less engaged in the thoughts of the world. This is your being. You can't do being. Try to do being. You can't do it. You can be aware of being, or you can be unaware of being. But you can't not be. And this beingness is already aware, even when you're not aware of it with your mind. And again, this is enlightenment in a nutshell. Just basic level awakening in a nutshell. It's I am awareness. I am that mystical, yet present and tangible quality of being aware. And it's always here. And it's never affected by whatever I feel and think and believe. It's never affected, but not even by the entire world, which exists in this tiny little electromagnetic thought reference. And all these references about the world, and about my world, and about my relationships, and about myself, and about me, and about them, have never in the slightest affected the I amness of this awareness, which is like space. It's because of that that you can hear my voice without effort. You can focus on my voice or not focus on it. You can hear what I'm saying or not hear what I'm saying, but you can't not register that I'm saying something. That is because of the power of that deeper awareness. It's ultimately beyond the conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. It is what all of these depend on. They need that power of awareness. Consciousness, small level consciousness, needs that awareness as its background, as its reality. And this is where you'll access love, because in that awareness, you transcend the duality that seems to exist within those little electromagnetic thought waves that project the world and others and self and others and self and others. And I could be safe or unsafe, and I am vulnerable inside this world. All these projections that distort and retard your life, your experience, that distort and retard your energy, that contract it, that make it stupid, that slow it down, that make it not feel good, that make you not feel your connection on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. These thoughts are in truth basking in love. You don't see that when you enter one of these telescopic thoughts, because then you see what the telescope sees. It's like a whole kaleidoscope is inside that little wave. And it seems so real when you're in it, when you're bound to it. But when you've forgiven that whole world, when you've released it, another word for forgiveness is release. Releasing it back to love, back to unity, back to oneness. When you release that thought form and the world that exists inside the thought form, we think thoughts exist inside the world, but check for yourself. The world exists inside your thoughts. When you release that, when you forgive that whole world, that particular world disappears. And that's why that particular reality and manifestation then tends to shift as well. You tend to generate some other perspective and some other world experience. But as long as you're bound to that belief, you're going to continue to reproduce a similar reality experience within those thought forms, within that imagination. So the thought thinks it's not basked in love because you're inside of it, you're looking through it. But when you look at the thought, as a little electromagnetic wave, now you gain access to a vaster consciousness, and you can begin to feel and realize that the thought about the world, or the thought about the person that you can't seem to forgive, or the thought about yourself which you can't seem to forgive for something you did or thought, all of that, the nature of that is basking in love already. It's already forgiven. This is why God is infinitely patient. This is why I am almost infinitely patient. And this is why some of you are perhaps also very patient. It depends on the degree to which you have realized, tapped into, become transparent to this deeper level of yourself, which is already in love with everything. So I went this route here in this lecture because I want you to see that forgiveness leads to liberation, and how it mechanistically has to do with your homecoming, your release back into your true self, from a more sort of almost scientific kind of approach, a mechanical approach, if you will. So now, knowing this, we can re-enter the world that we generally project as real. And we can talk more specifically about forgiveness using examples and so on. And I'm happy to start answering your questions soon as well. But a little bit more first on love in action, forgiveness. What does it look like? What does it feel like? How do you call it in? When should you do it, or when should you just take action? Is there a difference between forgiveness, like almost like a passive forgiveness, or an active, manifest forgiveness, where you express that forgiveness in the form of either an apology or an honest share with the person that this involves, or God in your prayers or meditations? So what does that look like, forgiveness? And when is it required? Well, you can never have enough of it. Let's just put it that way. So it's always required. But you can have it naturally. With enough practice, you can be in a natural state of automatic forgiveness. And again, this is where the patience comes from. Doesn't mean you never stand up for something. Doesn't mean you never reflect something to someone. Doesn't mean you're never fierce with another person if that's righteous and just. But it does mean that in the background, you're not really upset with them. And I can testify that this works that way from personal experience. If I think about my most annoying antagonists in this world and beyond this world, I have to kind of smile automatically. There's a radiant little, cheeky little, unconditionally loving little smile beneath the appearances of the game that we're playing. So even your worst enemies, even the people you hate out there, I hope you don't hate anyone, but if you do, that's fine. That is in need of forgiveness in yourself. And it's realistic. A lot of people, even though they don't like to admit it, do have resentful, hateful projections towards other selves. But you can arrive at a place where forgiveness is automatic. Again, doesn't mean you wouldn't necessarily go to court, or doesn't mean that you never have an argument or dialogue with them. But it does mean that in the back of your heart, or you could say in the back of your mind, which is your heart. The heart is the back of your mind. So in the back of your mind, there is ultimately nothing but love for the entities involved, including yourself. And you see through the game to the best of your ability. And so when you forgive, it's like that. It feels like that. It's like a release. Finally, it was coming. It was itching at my soul for a while. And then when I was finally mature enough to let go of my biases and see the unity in everything and forgive, there was the release, and I felt good. So forgiveness is kind of like a metaphysical sneeze from the heart. It's like, yeah, I know you did me wrong. I know I fucked up too. I know we're not perfect. Da, da, da. Well, who the fuck gives a fuck? It's like, hatred, 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 love. It's really quite like that. So it's no coincidence that I had to sneeze. I don't sneeze so often. It is like a sneeze of the soul, a sneeze of the heart. It's a release. And it can be very radical and powerful. It has the power to be in an instant, as opposed to some of the slower healing modalities, which usually take a lot of time. You need to understand their point of view, then you need to understand your point of view. You need to enter therapy with them and write each other a bunch of honest letters, trying not to project in those letters, which is almost impossible if you're not forgiving them yet. Forgiveness, if we can really tap into the trigger of what forgiveness is, what activates that. It is like a sneeze of the heart, a sneeze of the soul. It's liberation. It's releasing all the bondage. It's expunging all the bondage. What binds you? What binds you? First of all, it's mistaken identities. You identify with your thoughts. But on a more relative level, what binds you is a particular perspective. What binds you in an individual scenario is a perspective you hold on to about that scenario.
Massaro University is a vibrant online community dedicated to accelerating your awakening and activating your purpose for the benefit of all. Join live sessions with Bentinho and workshops led by experienced facilitators. Deepen your wisdom, empowerment, and self-knowledge, and experience life-changing shifts week after week. At Massaro University, finding like-hearted seekers is easy and inevitable. Lifelong friendships and a shared purpose fuel profound personal and collective growth. Create your free account today at massaro.university and step into a community that's designed to elevate every aspect of your life.
So forgiveness is the release of that perspective. And it's hidden in the word. Maybe this is not the common interpretation, but in the word forgiveness, vibrationally, there is I don't know exactly how to translate it. It doesn't quite match, but there is a giving. There's generosity. There's a forgiving. There's a giving for. There's a releasing of. Forgiveness is a release. It is a giving back to the field of generosity, of wholeness. It is a release of the little self back into the whole self. And who wouldn't want that? Because you feel amazing afterwards. You feel connected. You feel at home. And things can actually move. The energy of God can move through your creation again, can reshape things. Now, the more perspective you're holding on to, and the more resentment and beliefs and little stories that you're clinging to and repeating to yourself over and over, year after year, the less God can actually move into your manifest life and refigure it, reconfigure it. So if you want this I am presence, this love energy, to be able to blow through you like a flute, right? The air that blows through a flute is what produces the sound. So if you want harmonious sound to come out of your flute, meaning your life, meaning your channel of essentially your mind, your approach to life, then that flute's got to be empty. That wind tunnel's got to be empty. It's got to let it through. And if you're clogged up with all these perspectives and all those little holes or whatever they're called on the flute are stuck, clogged up, then you're not going to produce any harmonious tones. So if you're holding on to resentment towards someone or something consistently, or multiple people, or just in general, that is your attitude because you have come to believe you're a victim, now you will inevitably see everyone as a potential enemy, and you will create enemies everywhere you go. In some weird way, shape, or form, you'll always create opposition. You'll always create abandonment. You'll always create this and that. It's because you have a core perspective that you are a victim, that you have been treated unfairly by life. Right? And we all tend to carry some degree of this as human beings. But then that beautiful, magnificent, rejuvenating, highly intelligent, fused, love-infused energy of I am cannot move through your bodies, causal, subtle, and physical, and it cannot reconfigure it according to harmony and balance and alignment and acceleration and excitement. Or at least it's greatly stifled, it's halted, it's blocked. This is why forgiveness is the best gift to yourself. It's a gift, forgiveness, forgiftness. But often our mind, remember this tiny little wave that includes this whole world of what went wrong and who you are and who they are and what they did and what you didn't do, blah, blah, blah. It's just a tiny little electromagnetic wave. If you look at it, it's just a thought that comes and goes and it's gone. There's no proof of any of that thought. Any of the projections within that thought, there's no reality to it. You're creating bondage. You're creating anti-forgiveness. You're creating thoughts against the Creator, against Source, against harmony. This is why you hurt. This is why you suffer. This is why it's painful. Because you create separation where there is none. This is sin. The meaning of sin in my book is mistaken perception. It's a mistake. So I've not gone specific yet. And you know, one of the reasons I haven't done that yet, why I've focused so much on this more abstract approach, this more of a deeper understanding approach to forgiveness, is because if you get this, if you get where I'm coming from, if you get your own self, then the act of forgiveness and reconfiguring your life, or letting that divine energy reconfigure your life, becomes so much easier, more consistent, almost effortless, except in perhaps the most challenging of situations. But in general, you're going to be easy breezy, lemon squeezy. It's just going to come out of you. You are going to be the emanation of love. You're going to be the emanation of forgiveness, automatic forgiveness, in most circumstances at least. Potentially all, if you go deep enough in your freedom. That is ultimately what I would like you guys to get to. That's what I would like you to understand, that this is possible for you. Rather than, hey, here's a tool of how to forgive this person in your life. It's, it's just a minuscule micro level, and it's individual by individual by individual. It takes time. It's like a long process. And it's a worthwhile process, don't get me wrong. And if that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. But these efforts, even these smaller individual relative efforts, which are important, they can be empowered greatly. They can be accelerated greatly if you get the full picture in general. If you deepen your whole understanding of what this is all about, where it's coming from, and how it actually works, and what you actually are. If you can see that clearly, then forgiveness will become your aura. It'll be part of your aura. Patience, forgiveness, love, compassion. Again, doesn't mean you can't be fierce and kick someone's butt. You can. But it doesn't affect the love in the background, in the back of the mind, aka the heart. And it doesn't leave a personal trace. Or if it does, it's very little, and it's just sort of an energetic little cleanse that you have to do from having interacted with someone who has a lot of these negative energies still present. But it's not personal. You don't make it personal about yourself. If you do, then that's great, but then you have some forgiveness to do. You need to anchor yourself in the state of love a little bit more yourself. But if you have the state of love as your backup all the time, then it becomes so much easier to forgive. And then forgiveness can be a radical, instantaneous sneeze from the heart. If you reach high enough into your readiness, your maturity, to let go of all your insistence upon pain and suffering and unfairness and injustice and victimization, if you reach deeply enough into this willingness to become a man of God or a woman of God, instead of a man of man or a woman of men or a woman of women, you get the point. I'll just use the word man. It applies to both. So you can become a man of God instead of a man of men. But this requires willingness. Do you want to? Because for many years, for some of you, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, you have to some degree been conditioned to invest all your energy, all your I am presence, all your love into these distorted ideas, into this investment of a personal life, being a man of men, being a social creature in a certain way within the society, instead of having aspired to become a man of God. But if you're ready to become a man of God, then forgiveness will come very easily to you. It will be like a sneeze, a divine sneeze. It will be a radical release of everything you've ever held on to. Why? Why is it simple? Essentially, it's because at that pivotal moment, that pivoting point in your life, You have grown up as a soul enough to say, I'm done with all the tiny little, irrelevant, minuscule, happening on this tiny little rock in a vast universe. Bullshit. The only reason that's not easy for us is because we think that little piece of bullshit is us. But if you grow up enough, then you're ready to let go of yourself. This is the greatest maturity, is to be willing to transcend yourself, to forgive and release yourself. People always try to get rid of other things or other people or suffering about other things. And they fail to realize, to see, to acknowledge, to be honest, to be honorable, and say, hey, I am the source of all my issues. All of them. Every single freaking fucking one is because of you. Every single one. Yes, that one too. That one too. What about that one? Yes, that one too. Every single one is your fault. It's your mistake. It's your sin. It's your mistaken perception that caused it. Does that make you a bad entity? No. You're perfect. You are God. But you got to deal with your stuff. You got to acknowledge it. If you're not willing to acknowledge that you are the bullshit, then how are you going to be free of it? It's going to be a very slow, very tedious process. And I don't get why you guys tolerate that. Why do you tolerate this very tedious year? How many years have you wasted trying to forgive something or someone or grow out of your skin? How slow is this process, huh? And I'll get to why that's okay too. That is to be forgiven too. God is patient. You are patient. But you get my point, no? Why so much unnecessary day to day? How many trillions of these tiny little electromagnetic thought forms that seem to include a whole world of duality and separation and righteousness? How many of these have you endured? And then inside of that, you're trying to grow spiritually. How slow of a process is this, my friends? I don't care if it's a slow process because that's what's needed. But how much of this is just indulgence, entertainment, Netflix, dramatization, you tolerating bullshit? I think 99% of the time that it takes you to grow up spiritually is because of this entertainment value, this wicked sense of pleasure that we derive from being a separate little human being with its complex story and righteousness and justice, and it's entertaining to us. We indulge it. We find gratification in our suffering. So we tolerate our suffering. You will get whatever you tolerate. So ask yourself, why do I tolerate this slow process when I could have this massive Big Bang kind of a sneeze of consciousness and just expunge myself? Forget about the other person that you're trying to forgive. It's not about them. You can't forgive someone else. Let me go straight to the core. It's impossible to forgive someone else. All that happens when you forgive another is you forgive/release yourself from yourself. You cancel your Netflix subscription. That's what forgiveness is. You cancel your Netflix subscription to your own freaking mind. That's what forgiveness does. I've had enough with these endless shows, these endless movies, this endless indoctrination. I'm gonna unsubscribe from my bullshit little self. That's the radical approach, my friends. That's the direct approach. I at least wanted to offer it to you. I'll lighten up again, no problem. See, no trace. There's no personal anger here. I love you to bits. We can hang out for years and decades and play pool and cards and have fun. We don't have to do anything. Everything is perfect. Be my guest. Live life the way you want. Indulge in all the shows and television and series in your own mind that you like. No hard feelings. I don't care. I care about you, but I don't care what you choose. It's fine. But at least I gave you some access energetically to unsubscribing from yourself. And for those who are ready for that, this is like the sneeze of God. And I know from direct experience the result of that. And so I would wish that for you. All of the universe wants that for you. It is a homecoming. It is the wellspring of all impeccable clarity. And nothing in your mind can compete with this. None of the movies in your mind, even those with the best possible outcome that you're still hoping for. If only this person realizes how much they hurt me. Freaking insane to buy into that stuff. Freaking insane. It's a socially reinforced, indoctrinated, reified idea, the symbology, separation, duality, righteousness, victim, perpetrator. Only you can set yourself free. Let go of the bondage. Or not, or don't. Your life is your canvas. Your life is your choice. Even to blame it on others is your choice. If you still get pleasure out of that wicked, distorted, fetishy kind of a gratification out of those storylines, but hanging in there, hoping for that outcome, wanting them to see this or that, and you haven't yet realized you're to blame. Misperception is to blame. And you don't realize that that's where the cause lies, and that therefore that's where the release, the forgiveness is. Then I'm afraid you'll continue to create life in a stifled manner. Staggering. And I don't wish this for you. This is why I am fierce, because I do love you. But your free will is your free will. And just all I can do is inspire and use some sharp words every once in a while, and then a lot of other loving, patient words the rest of the time, 80% or so. 20-80 is a decent measure of fierceness versus niceness and kindness and patience. But you see, even impatience can, in someone sufficiently realized, impatience can be an expression of patience. It's just guidance, it's just clarity. What actually can help people the most? Right now, these 300 people on this call, I have the privilege, I have the opportunity, 300 entities, 300 sub-creators, 300 extensions of the infinite. That's a lot of power we've got here. It's a lot of resource. What can I possibly say that would help them cut down on years of slow progressional forgiveness work? Therapist after therapist, hypnotic session after hypnosis, Reiki after Reiki, meditation after meditation. Great, that's beautiful, it's perfect. But what could I possibly say to you that would wake you up instead? Realize that you're the cause of the horrific state of our planet. No matter how beautiful and spiritual you think you already are, you are the cause of it all. The koalas dying in the fires a few years ago in Australia, all the other wildfires, the war in Ukraine, it's your fault. It's directly 100% because of you. You don't have to understand how this works. Just believe me, it works that way. You are creating, contributing to that, as am I. So, but the point to realize here is that you do actually create your own reality. And this is, I'm not pointing fingers to blame you, but I'm trying to help you. I'm trying to inspire you to take this to the root cause and not just keep believing in the illusion that it's out there, that it somehow has something to do with your circumstances or the other person. Forgiveness and love is a state of being. It's not a state of circumstances. It's an identity shift, my friends. It's you growing up, no longer being a spiritual child, but realizing I want to actually be a man of God, more than I want to be a human being with its storyline and its pride and its successes and its failures and its even your hero's journey. Don't worry, that will happen. Every single one of you have their own hero's journey of how you faced opposition and challenge and how you're going to overcome it. And it's all going to beautifully resolve itself, or at least most of it will. Each of you are already on a hero's journey of your own making. Don't worry about that. You don't have to manage that so well. It's more important to grow up, to mature in your heart's willingness to want to look up to God, to source, to the original freedom, the purity, to want to become pure more than you want to think that you are pure and they are not. The path to purity is to acknowledge that you're the cause of all the bullshit in your life. That's purity. Purity's got nothing to do with telling yourself the story that you're innocent, because you're not. You're not innocent. You're perfect. You are unconditionally loving, but you're not without mistake. You have made many mistakes in your life. You have made many mistakes in your life. Doesn't mean you're imperfect. The mistakes are good for something too. They're good for a learning journey, and they're all part of the perfection. You see, there's a paradox in here. People have difficulty holding all that in the same space. It's like, well, either I'm bad and then I can never be redeemed, so therefore let me tell myself consistently that I'm a good person and I meant well and I'm not to blame for this, someone else is. I didn't create them doing that to me. I didn't create their abandonment of me. Yes, you did. Yes, you freaking did. Absolutely, 100% you did. Does that make you a bad person? No. Are you full of mistakes? Absolutely fucking yes. So you see, if you can hold this with maturity, then your path to purity is clear and it is direct. If you cannot 100% accept your shadow side, if you cannot even acknowledge that you made a mistake, that you are sinning all the time in your thoughts, meaning you're all the time misperceiving things, creating stories about other people. No? Am I off? Are you fucking Dalai Lama plus? Because even he, I'm sure, has the occasional negative projection onto someone else. Just the way that he holds it is mature, right? But unless you're completely enlightened, not just in spirit, but also in body and mind, not just transcendent, but also ascendant, you're gonna have your little wobbles. You're gonna have your distortions on a day-to-day basis. What's so bad about that? Nothing. But they are mistakes. And they are there to be corrected. And they offer you a path into redemption, into release, into forgiveness, into freedom, into becoming a man of God, into purifying yourself. Very instantaneously, very quickly. This does not have to be a long, arduous, slow journey. You make it so because you're holding on to those perspectives. That's not forgiveness. That's not the releasing. It's not the gifting away of your problems. You have to own your problems before you can gift them away. You can't disown your problems and then blame other people and then try to forgive. Good luck. It's not going to work. We have to face the fact that we're the culprit of our own reality. Got a nice quote here by Saint Germain. Always, when one has been conscious of having made a mistake, his first act should be to call on the law of forgiveness and demand wisdom and strength not to make the same mistake a second time. You see, he talks about forgiveness, but at the same time, to demand the wisdom and strength not to make the same mistake a second time. That takes acknowledgement, that takes ownership, that takes will, that takes maturation, that takes making that choice to become a man of God that much more appealing to you than to stay a man of man. God, being all love, as you all realized, must have infinite patience. And no matter how many mistakes one may have made, he can always once again arise and go unto the Father. Such is the love and freedom within which God's children are privileged to act. This is why you are allowed to take 4 decades to suffer, to tolerate your stories, because you are embraced in an infinite love and patience. I don't know if that's really that loving of God, to be so patient that you forget you even should kick yourself in the butt, take ownership of your mistakes. I think God is a little too lenient. Could be a little bit stricter of a father. Because even the suffering that you get in return is somehow not enough to wake us up. God is so patient, so freely giving, your free will is basked in love. So it essentially doesn't matter what you do, what you choose. But it does matter to you, doesn't it? Does it not? It causes suffering, it causes friction. But you have all the freedom in the world to continue this for 100,000 lifetimes. To tolerate it, to not realize that it is a mistake. That's how free you are. So I'm here to tell you, it's a mistake. Stop tolerating suffering. Suffering equals mistaken perception. Yes, it's part of life, but it's part of the deluded life. It's not part of the awakened life. So when you suffer, it's pointing you in the direction of your own thinking that needs forgiveness, that needs love, that needs reconciliation. So yes, it's part of life, but it's part of life because we are mistaken in our perceptions. And that leads to mistaken actions and mistaken verbalizations, aka our mistakes. But at the core of every mistake we've ever made, every wrongdoing, even if it's little ones, at the core of that, there is a misperception. This is what I call sin. It's the Antichrist. It's to think against God. And you do this for the most part innocently. But your tolerance for it is baffling, no? How much of this we tolerate, this suffering. Make a mistake, I get corrected, I don't appreciate it, I don't really want to acknowledge I made the mistake, and so I continue living, not dealing with the core misperception that's causing all this stress. So you see, we need to go to the core of it, my friends. You have an infinite universe. God's love is like, hey, infinite universe, infinite time, go ahead. My unconditional love, right now, my extension, my expression of that, my version of that, looks to remind you that you have a limited time spent here on earth. Do not waste your time. Do not waste the next few decades of your life or years. Do not. Take your rightful place. This means total 100% acknowledgement of your mistakes. Then there will be freedom. Then forgiveness is easy. But if you keep denying this part of yourself, these parts within yourself, you can't forgive shit. You can't forgive anyone, let alone yourself. At the end of the day, again, forgiveness is only forgiveness of self. And not in the partial sense, right? So not, okay, this person did me wrong. That's just a story, by the way. That's not a fact per se. But let's say, okay, person B did person A wrong. I'm person A, they're person B. They did something, it hurt my feelings. They went against their word, maybe. They promised something and didn't fulfill it. They abandoned us, talked bad about us, whatever it might be. Person B is bad in my mind. Person A thinks that it is person A to begin with, which is an assumption as well. But let's say you believe you're person A, so I believe I'm person A, and person B did something wrong to me. I believe that. There's no proof for it, but I believe it. I don't like how it feels when I believe it, but I want to believe it more. It hurts me, it leads to nothing good. It keeps me suppressed for years. But I want to believe it. I know it's not true ultimately, but I believe it. What is that? What in the world is that? But I believe it. What is that? Feel the frequency of it? It's annoying. But I believe it. It's freaking annoying, and it's on repeat. It's in the back of your... But I believe it. What is that? Such an annoying frequency. I'll say it again. But I believe it. May you never forget it again. May you hear this in your own thoughts. But I believe it. So what that you believe it? Yeah, but I believe it. But it's not working out for you. It doesn't lead you to paradise. Yes, but I believe it. What is that, my friend? What is that torturous little insistent brat? What is that? That little brat will never want to acknowledge that it's the cause of all its problems. But it is. The moment you acknowledge it, it's like the door that was already open opens. The door which can never be closed, which somehow you managed to close anyway. What a feat of accomplishment. Opens back up. You open it back up. Forgiveness is the release of insistence. The release of I am right. Because if you're right in a perspective, you can never forgive them nor yourself. Forgiveness is the liberation from your own belief system. So again, person B, in my mind, as person A, which is also in my mind, but I think I am person A. Person B seems to be the antagonist, seems to be the object of my contention. They did something, I didn't like it, I didn't feel it was fair or just, and I believe it. Okay, fine, so I believe it. I notice I'm in a contracted state because I believe it by my own choice. I notice on a day-to-day basis, it's holding me back. It's contracting me. It's making me suffer. It's making me think about it. I'm thinking nasty things I don't want to think. It doesn't allow me to freely act on my passion, on my purpose for being here. I'm distorting and retarding my entire reason for being on earth. That's what I'm doing because I believe it. Well, how much is that believing in it worth it? Let's say they actually did something that was harmful. They made a mistake. They abandoned you when they said they wouldn't. They treated you unfairly. Maybe it is factual. All right. But what is it worth to you to believe it? At what cost? And at what potential return of investment? Like, what are you hoping for? That some other human being with their tiny little freaking lips on planet Earth inside of an infinite galaxy start vibrating in a certain way that acknowledges your pain? Really? Are you going to suffer for the next 20 freaking years? Keep yourself in this tiny little prison of your own making because you believe in, so that hopefully after 20 years, they will acknowledge and recognize how they've hurt you. That'll take them 2 fucking seconds to do that. And you're keeping yourself in a contracted state for 20 years to get 2-second validation, hopefully if you're lucky, if you play your cards right. All the while forgetting why you are on earth, what you're here to do and be and radiate as. You are bound to your own beliefs. That's nobody's fault. That's not person B's fault. That's your free will. True forgiveness is forgiveness of self. It's the release of self. It's the liberation of self. It's the detachment from what you believe. And what is the little self but whatever it believes? Beliefs are the Antichrist thought form. Got to be aware of those. Acknowledge them. Own them. Doesn't make you bad. You're perfect. You're not even this person. You're not this body. What are you so stressed about? Acknowledge the mistake. It's not a big deal. Acknowledge the mistaken identity. It's not a big deal. It's liberating. Acknowledge that you're creating this, that you're insisting upon this, that you had a part to play in that dynamic as well, that they were reflecting your beliefs as well. Acknowledge this so you may set yourself free and come back into God. So ask yourself, yes, you believe it. Fine, mind, believe it. Believe it all you will. Mind, good for you. You believe it? They really did you wrong? They did you a good one? You didn't see it coming? You trusted them with all your heart and still they did that to you? How dare they? You really believe that's what happened? You believe you had nothing to do with it? You were pure and innocent and open like a freaking newborn baby in his diaper, and they were this ravenous predator that betrayed you, hurt you. Okay, so you believe that, and you can back it up with facts, which you call memories, which are highly unreliable. The longer it takes, the longer you play victim to that same story, the more your memory of it is inaccurate from what actually happened, by the way. But, whatever. Let's say it is accurate. Do you want to keep believing in that? What's the cost? At what cost? And what's the price? What's the satisfaction in that? For whom are you doing it? Why keep yourself in bondage for that asshole? Anyway, let's say person B is actually an asshole. And there are assholes. I mean, everyone needs one. There's plenty of them on planet Earth. You know, everyone needs an asshole. And I mean this also metaphysically. It's not healthy to not have an asshole in your life. You won't grow. You won't see yourself reflected. You won't have as much of an opportunity to learn. So appreciate that asshole in your life. They are your teacher. I think you got the point, no? Before I go too off the rails here. Once there's a momentum, you know, I gotta sometimes reel myself back a little bit. So, you get the point. I hope you get the transmission. You're the problem, and it's okay. Forgive yourself. Be free of yourself. Forget about them, they, them, this, that. That's not where God is. That's not where freedom is. That's not where your access point to God and love and forgiveness is. It's only in your own presence right now. So go there, be mature enough, be ready enough. See how much you've suffered for absolutely no payoff. Because you believed it. So be done with believing in it. Say to the mind, your mind, which is an object, it's not you, it's not the subject. You're looking at your mind, so it cannot be you. So it doesn't matter what your mind believes. It doesn't matter how much evidence it has for being right. It doesn't matter. It could be right. Maybe it is right. So what? That's not the point. You might be completely right. You were abused. Absolutely. You're completely correct. But so what? How does that serve you now? How does that serve you now? And are you going to really wait for your own liberation on those 2-second lip vibrations of that perpetrator or that person or that asshole? Are you really going to wait for them to realize something? Are you going to forsaken your mission on earth because you're too busy hoping that 20 years down the line, you get 2 seconds of lip service from a person you don't even like anyway and don't want to spend any more time with? Liberation is through self. Forgiveness is of self, and that includes other selves, you see? Your projection of other selves lives within yourself. Outside of yourself, there's no problem with others. You're making the problem with others, even if you're correct in your perspectives, that you have been the one that was abused or betrayed or abandoned or whatever. Yes, you are right, but so what? How does that serve you now? And how do you want to channel your focus? So take your life force back. Stop outsourcing it into this thought of others. And remember that you are the power, and the power is always only now. You cannot practice in the future. You cannot change something in the future. Your point of power is now. And your location of power is self, not other self. So realize you're the problem and then forgive yourself, which automatically includes, like a package deal, every single person who ever did you wrong, because it's all in that belief system. When you forgive yourself, when you lose yourself, for the sake of becoming a man of God or closer to that, you are free. You are beyond both the perpetrator and the victim. You are beyond person A and person B. You are free of that whole game. Forgiveness is the first step to liberation. It's the door to liberation. But it's got to be forgiveness of yourself. And you can't forgive yourself if you think that you're not to blame. You did make a mistake. You make the mistake of continuing to think what you think. That is a mistake. Unless it feels marvelous and beautiful all the time, and it allows you to help the whole planet wake up, then it's a good thought. If it doesn't meet that criteria, you're making a mistake, believing in that thought. The remedy, the solution, is forgiveness of self, first through ownership. You could say ownership of self is the step to forgiveness of self, is the step to liberation of self.
Thank you for watching this Bentinho live session. Bentinho now hosts these transformative live sessions completely free, offering profound insights and guidance to support your journey. To attend the next live session with Bentinho, simply visit massaro.university and follow the instructions to create your free account.